Good evening, listeners. Welcome to the ghostly broadcast, Paranormal Station. I'm your host, Timothy, settling down on my farm as the cold tendrils of winter creep into the fields. The earth beneath our feet does more than bear fruit from its soil. Deep within the rocks, mountains, and dirt are veins of precious ores. Left buried for eons, we have mastered their extraction and refinery into the things that make our modern world what it is today. However, this came at a significant cost of life and limb. The brave men who descended into the mine shafts risked it all, sometimes for a pittance. We hear testimonies of their plight in the old haunted mines and the townships they built in North America tonight. Our first testimony. Dear Timothy, I'm Christa. I want to start by saying that I regret the decision that led me to see what I saw. The whole thing felt disrespectful, but I sincerely believed ghosts didn't exist. How I wound up with a team of amateur ghost hunters was more of a chance. I had a friend in a small hobby group, and she invited me on an expedition with them. I didn't believe in it, but it was cheap, and I needed the vacation. It was a chance to get a cheap room and hike a bit of Northern California. The Argonaut Mine was precisely how I imagined it, a derelict ruin in the middle of nowhere. Picked clean of anything worth a damn and trashed by anyone else that wandered through it. My friend told me all about the disaster. A large group of miners had been trapped underground when a fire broke out. None of them survived despite rescue efforts. The mine wasn't exactly safe either, but being in the 19th century, no one really gave a damn. We hung around until long after sunset. I found myself a perch to sit at while the hobbyists did their thing. Just being there to hunt ghosts felt off, but what they did next felt like desecrating a grave. They all formed a circle in the middle of the empty yard. The medium pulled out a vial of red liquid, put some in her mouth, and then spat it onto the floor. "Let this righteous blood bring you renewed life spirits. Come to us and reveal yourselves," she shouted. The rest of them, my friend included, repeated, "Reveal yourselves," in unison. I shook my head, muttering the strong words I would have with my friend after it was all over. Suddenly, I felt the earth rumble beneath me. The rock I was sitting on vibrated through my whole body. I leapt up thinking it might be an earthquake, but the ground in front of me split open. Smoke, fire, and heat bellowed out of a crack in the earth. It split, cracked, and spread into a vast chasm. Inside was a furnace of heat that spat ferocious flames into the night sky, and hell itself opened in front of me. Everyone screamed and scattered. I was stuck on one side of the chasm, with the ghost hunters on the other. Unable to move around it, I just watched, frozen in shock. Then I heard the screams. Harrowing, blood-curdling screams. Arms rose out of the chasm, followed by bald, charred bodies. Skinny, burnt men started to clamber out of the hole. They crawled over each other and dragged themselves across the floor towards the crew. With arms outstretched, they yelled and cried out, as if they were grasping for breath, trying to suck in the fresh night air. When they did, their cracked, charred skin lit up in embers, and they howled even harder. The hobbyists and my friends sprinted off into the night, leaving me alone, stuck on the other side of the crack. I scrambled up the slope behind me to get away. When I reached the top of the ridge, I looked back to see if they were following me. They weren't paying attention to me. They crawled all over the ground, wailing and weeping, tossing and turning. I don't know how long they suffered, but it must have been endless for them. I dashed down the other side of the slope and headed off after the rest of the crew. When I reached the van, the medium was consoling the others. I marched up to her and slapped her across the face as hard as I could. My friend pulled me away as I cussed all of them out. Repeatedly. I made my own way home after that. I still haven't spoken to my friend again, and it's been a few months. I didn't believe in ghosts, ghouls, or any supernatural beings before. I still don't even know what I think now, but I know for sure that what they did, what that medium was messing around with, I know in my heart that it was wrong. Hauling those poor men out of their graves to relive their final agony all over again seems to be the ultimate cruelty to me. Let the dead rest. Thanks, Christa. Thank you for your testimony, Christa. The spirits of the paranormal realm do not exist for our entertainment. They are a poorly understood phenomena that no one should trifle with lightly. Our next testimony comes from Ringwood, New Jersey. Dear Timothy, I've always loved working at Ringwood State Park. It's a beautiful place tied right into our nation's history. It's the resting place of Robert Erskine, an inventive Scotsman who operated the ironworks here during the Revolutionary War. As Washington's Surveyor General, he was employed to make maps for the Continental Army, and the iron mine he operated at Ringwood supplied munition. There has always been a rumor that his ghost walks the manor's grounds, but there hasn't been a confirmed sighting since the early 1900s. I figured it was just people being less superstitious these days. That was until the other night. I got called to check on a ruckus that set the alarm off. The manor was undisturbed as far as I could tell. It wasn't uncommon for something in the old place to creak and moan. For all I knew, it could have been a mouse. I was crossing the grounds to return to my car and heard a rattle. A rattle like small sticks, like bones. I froze for a moment, feeling my heart rise in my chest. I turned around to see what it was. I saw a stream of ghostly figures. Translucent men marched slowly, carrying picks and tools. Tired, beaten, and disheveled men of the mines through ages past. Some of them had brutal injuries. Others had pale purple faces and eyes bulging. So many of them had deep scratches in their throats. Blood and skin in their fingernails. It didn't matter what period they appeared to have died. The injuries were the same. And there were hundreds of them, Timothy. All wandering in the same direction. I looked to see where they were headed and saw him. A man in a tricorn hat stood over a table, handing maps to the dead miners. Each got a map, and then the man in the tricorn would carefully draw another one, charting out a course for each man. It was Erskine, standing by his crypt by the light of a blue lantern that swung above his maps. A cartographer for the dead, a surveyor for the souls. I blinked, and the scene was gone. Nothing but dead, dark silence on the grounds of the manor. I slapped my cheeks and shook my head. Got back in my car and went home, wondering if I'd gone crazy, or just imagined something. That sound I'd heard, it was real, I'm sure of it. But what I saw with my eyes, I couldn't believe it myself. I figured it might make more sense if I wrote it down. I dunno, I've never really believed in ghosts. Maybe it'll make sense to you or your listeners. Yours sincerely, Dalton. Thank you for that testimony, Dalton. We folks still living can't understand how the paranormal realm works, or figure out its topography. Still, maybe some of us could chart out the unknown spirit worlds in death. Our next testimony comes from Jimmy in Colorado. Dear Timothy, I'm Jimmy, and I've always been interested in old-timey stuff. The Old West and its conquered frontiers are fascinating subjects. It might sound really nerdy, but I was overjoyed when my girlfriend booked us a trip to Colorado to see some old frontier towns and mines. Specifically, the old Phoenix gold mine in Idaho Springs. Sure, it's kinda touristy, but it's still a fantastic sight. I'm not a big believer in ghosts or spirits, and I rolled my eyes when the tour guide told us about the mine being featured on Ghost Hunters. But I guess my mind has been opened since then. We were deep into the mine, and the guide told us about the Tommyknockers. Old folk legends of gnome-like creatures that lived underground. Some were said to be mischievous, others warned miners of impending doom. Either way, none of it was supposed to be taken seriously. No one expected to see a leprechaun jump out of the rock or something. I was looking at some old machinery and reading the info panels when I heard a knocking sound. At first, I thought it was some rocks tumbling, but then I heard it again. A knock, knock, knock. It was deliberate. It had a purposeful rhythm to it. A knock, knock, knocking. Do you hear that? I asked my girlfriend. Nope. Are you coming? The group is moving up, she said. I shrugged it off and followed her to the rest of the group. The rest of the tour went by without anything untoward. My girlfriend and I enjoyed exploring the grounds and gift shop before returning to our car. On our way back to our hotel, I was driving and giving her all the cliff notes of the info panels I'd read throughout the day. At the stoplight of an intersection, I waited patiently for the light to turn green. As it did, I was about to hit the gas when I heard that knocking sound again. A knock, knock, knock. Do you hear that? I asked my girlfriend. Hear what? She asked. The car behind us honked for me to move. I snapped out of it and went for the gas. Right before I did, I heard a deafening horn. A runaway semi flew through the red light across the intersection and slammed into the barrier at the side of the road. My girlfriend and I looked at each other. My heart was in my throat. If I hadn't hesitated, that semi would have T-boned us. I got out, and the driver of the semi was okay. His brakes had failed, and he couldn't stop. We gave a statement to the highway patrol and went on our way. Did you hear the truck? My girlfriend asked. I heard something, I said, but I don't know what it was. And to this day, Timothy, I still don't know precisely what it was. My own personal Tommyknocker warning me of danger? Maybe. Yours, Jimmy. Thank you for your testimony, Jimmy. Not all spirits are malevolent. While they can be fickle tricksters, not all of them wish to see us pained and suffering. Our final testimony of the evening comes from Jenny in Nevada. Dear Timothy, I'm Jenny. Some friends and I were taking the scenic route to Vegas from Boise, Idaho, and we stopped off in a little old mining town called Tonopah. We stayed in the Mizpah Hotel in the middle of its historic downtown. We spent the day sightseeing. We saw the old mine that laid the foundations of the town, the old graveyard and the stories of the people who are buried there. All in all, it was a fun place to stop. After a few drinks, we returned to the Mizpah to turn in. We were only there for one night and were hitting the road again in the morning. When we walked into the lobby, I spied a book about hauntings at the hotel. Do you believe in ghosts? The night receptionist asked me. I scoffed and told no. The receptionist handed me the key to room 502. I said goodnight to my friends and headed to bed. I tossed and turned for most of that night, but eventually fell asleep. At least, I thought I had. I'm not sure if I was asleep or dreaming or paralyzed, but what happened next still haunts me now. I woke up on my back, staring up. A beautiful woman in a red dress was straddling me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Her face began to pale, and her eyes turned from a deep brown into pale, white spheres. Dark patches of blood started to appear on her chest. There were too many to count before they melded into a deep, dark blob as blood began to pour onto me from her open wounds. The lady clasped her hands around my neck and squeezed hard. I tried to breathe. I wanted to kick her off and scream, but I couldn't move. She screamed at me in a hoarse rasp, and I saw her broken windpipe strain to get the air out. I don't know how long this lasted, but it felt like a lifetime. I felt my body shake and jerk uncontrollably for air. I felt consciousness slipping away. I don't know what it's like to die, but this felt like it. I felt life leaving me. I woke up to a fit of coughing. I grabbed at my throat and sucked down big gulps of air. I felt the blood rush to my head, feeling faint as it did. I took a second to compose myself and catch my bearings. I turned the light on to see if this lady in red was still there. The room was empty. I looked at the nightstand for my phone to see what time it was. My phone had been unplugged and moved. I picked it up and examined it in the palm of my hand. It was right by my phone, plugged into its charger. I'd have noticed it if it had been there before I went to sleep. The following day at breakfast, my friends were keen to tell me how shitty I looked, and I detailed the night to them. I asked if they'd seen anything like that, but none had. It was just me. I showed them the pearl as proof. Still, they were dismissive about it. In a way, I'm kinda glad they were. It made me feel like maybe I wasn't crazy, and it was just a nutty dream. The receptionist I'd met last night saw the pearl on our way out and remarked, "She must have taken a liking to you." "Who?" I asked. "The lady in red," he responded. "Kind regards, Jennifer." "Thank you for your testimony, Jennifer. It's easy to be frightened when we're confronted with the brutal horror of a spirit's earthly demise. For some, it may be the only way they have left to express themselves to us living folk." This concludes the evening's broadcast testimonies. If you enjoyed this evening, listener, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon to be notified when all our latest broadcasts are live. It helps our work to detail and catalog the places of this world, where the barrier between the paranormal planes is at its thinnest through testimonies gathered by those who have experienced them. I've been your host, Timothy. Good evening, listeners, and take care.